I, a 26-year-old woman, have found myself entangled in a complex situation of my own making, which is difficult to articulate without feeling embarrassed. My husband, 28, and I have been in a committed relationship for over 5 years, including 4 years of dating before our marriage. We both hail from the same small town and grew up within the same social circle. 2 years ago, we relocated to the city due to my husband's work commitments. However, we continued to visit our hometown periodically to connect with our families. Last Christmas, while back in our hometown to celebrate with our loved ones, I became acquainted with some of my husband's old friends who had also returned to town. He had invited them over for dinner, and I eagerly agreed to host them. It wasn't until I encountered one of my husband's childhood friends, a man with an infectious boyish charm that immediately captivated me, that I began to feel a yearning for something more in my life. On Christmas Eve, we exchanged subtle glances, and I noticed how he would discreetly admire me whenever I stood up. This attention strangely boosted my ego. That night, nothing more occurred, and we returned home after the gathering. Following Christmas, we began chatting almost daily, with our conversations gradually evolving into more flirtatious exchanges. I found myself increasingly desiring a physical relationship. As we planned to stay in our hometown until New Year's, we decided to throw a large New Year's party. He attended the event, and as the night wore on and everyone else drifted off to sleep, including my husband, who had fallen asleep on the couch, I engaged in conversation with his friend. One thing led to another, and before we knew it, we found ourselves in the attic, my former bedroom, succumbing to our physical desires. The clarity that washed over me after that intimate encounter was overwhelming. I realized the gravity of my actions, and I couldn't stop sobbing. I believed that coming clean to my husband once we returned to the city was the right course of action, and that's exactly what I did. The aftermath was heart-wrenching. My husband's reaction was explosive, leading to a confrontation with his friend, who he coerced into promising never to see me again. After he calmed down, my husband expressed his willingness to work on our relationship, which provided me with some relief. We sought therapy for 2 months after the incident, putting in considerable effort to salvage our relationship. However, I had underestimated my husband's forgiving nature. 2 months later, when my husband was on a night shift, I received a flirtatious message from his friend. Unable to resist temptation, I engaged in a full-blown sexual chat. It was at this point that I had to make a decision. I chose to keep my husband in the dark, believing that what he didn't know wouldn't hurt him. This allowed me to continue enjoying both the love and care he provided and the secret physical relationship with his friend. However, life had other plans in store for me. My husband discovered my affair not even a week after it had begun, and his anger was so intense that I feared discussing anything with him. Following our confrontation, he demanded that I pack my bags and leave immediately, leaving me with no other option. I returned to our hometown and stayed at a motel for a couple of days, hoping he would call me back home. While I acknowledged the pain I had caused, I struggled to comprehend the extreme measures he took to expel me from our home. I eventually moved into my grandparents' house and found myself unable to explain the events that had transpired between us, leading to the breakup of a relationship that had spanned many years. My doubts about the foundation of respect in our relationship and how it would impact our healing process left me in a state of emotional turmoil. I not only felt profound disappointment in myself for my actions but also grappled with the challenge of coming to terms with it all. I had hoped for some resolution, and we ended up exchanging numbers. I had convinced my husband to meet his friend one last time before parting ways. However, I was shocked to learn that he had been monitoring my phone and had scrutinized every conversation with his friend down to the smallest detail. My situation took a drastic turn when my husband sent me divorce papers this Christmas. It felt like life had brought me full circle, making me realize the root of our problems and how I had been the primary cause of my own misery. Currently, I am residing at my grandmother's house, feeling like an outcast and grappling with the aftermath of my personal life being exposed to friends and family. If anyone has advice for someone in my situation, it would be greatly appreciated. In our small town, news travels fast, and nearly everyone has heard the story. Even those who haven't seem to have created their own versions of events. I've noticed the way people look at me and whisper behind my back, but there's no one to blame for my predicament except myself. My husband visited me once to return my belongings, and it became the talk of the town. Since then, I haven't seen him again. I wish I could undo many of my actions, but deep down, I selfishly wish my husband had never found out. In that alternate scenario, I could still be living a happy married life with him. Life has thrown me into a hurricane, and I'm struggling to find my footing in this chaos. Perhaps someday I'll discover a way to forgive myself and build something new, but for now, it's one day at a time. Feel free to share your thoughts and advice on how I should navigate this new chapter of my life. It's evident that you made some regrettable choices and you're facing the consequences. You not only cheated on your husband twice but also continued the affair while he remained unaware. You betrayed his trust, making it unsurprising that he couldn't forgive you. Now, you're dealing with the fallout from your actions, and the responsibility rests squarely on your shoulders. Regarding the gossip in your small town, it's a challenge you must confront. People will talk and form their own judgments. It's a harsh lesson in understanding how your choices affect your life and the lives of those around you. It's time for self-reflection and personal growth. Learn from your mistakes, work on becoming a better person, and perhaps, over time, you'll find a path forward from this chaotic situation. It won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight. Story 2. I am a 26-year-old woman who recently had an affair and was caught by my 27-year-old boyfriend. We met nearly 2 years ago, and our relationship progressed rapidly. After just 2 months, I moved in with him, and we were on the verge of starting a family together. However, as our relationship developed, he began to take me for granted, and I started feeling increasingly lonely. When I attempted to communicate my unhappiness to him, he brushed it off, leading me to seek attention elsewhere, ultimately becoming involved with a doctor. I started off as a distant friend to this doctor I used to work for, with no intention of forming a close bond, especially considering he was a married man. However, I eventually answered one of his calls, and over time, he began reaching out to me more frequently. We started going out for desserts at night, and due to our shared profession, we found we had a lot in common. As 2 months passed, I found myself growing attached to him. My boyfriend had cautioned me to stay away from this doctor, but I chose not to heed his advice. Eventually, I decided to move out of my boyfriend's house in pursuit of independence, even though he was making amends for his past mistakes. Sadly, I couldn't see that, and a part of me became greedy. Deep down, I understood that there was no future with this doctor friend, so I attempted to end our friendship. However, he resisted, expressing sadness each time I distanced myself from him, and I found myself feeling sympathetic toward him. To make a long story short, our relationship eventually became physical on a few occasions, and my boyfriend discovered the evidence of my actions at my place. Seeing how hurt he was made me realize the gravity of my wrongdoing, and I made the difficult